So there I was, Marcus Webb, 32 years old, holder of a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering that I'd stopped mentioning at parties, currently employed as a maintenance technician on the Rusty Fortune. Yes, that was the actual name of our salvage vessel. No, the irony was not lost on anyone. My job description was simple. Keep the toilets flushing, the air recyclers recycling, and try not to get sucked into space when someone forgot to close an airlock. Again. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than my last gig fixing ice cream machines on Mars, so I wasn't complaining. Much. Marcus, get up here. Captain Vrix's voice squawked through the intercom, rattling my toolbox. We've got something big. I sighed, put down my wrench, and climbed up from Deck C, where I'd been elbow-deep in a waste reclamation unit. Glamorous, I told you. Captain Vrix was what humans call a Kretok, which basically means he looked like someone crossed a peacock with a velociraptor and gave it delusions of grandeur. He stood at the bridge viewport, his crest feathers fully extended in what I'd learned meant either excitement or gastrointestinal distress. Behold, he announced, gesturing dramatically at the view screen. I beheld. Floating in the endless nothing of dead space was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling the Pacific Ocean a puddle. This thing was massive. Easily 5 kilometers long, all smooth curves and geometric patterns that hurt to look at too long. It was the kind of ancient that made you feel like a mayfly. It's the Eternal Architect, breathed Mira Santos, our pilot, her eyes wide with what I recognized as dangerous ambition. Mira was one of those humans who'd seen too many hollow films about plucky heroes discovering ancient treasures. She had the confidence of someone who'd never failed at anything important, mainly because she'd never tried anything important. The what now? I asked. Torgo, our engineer, rumbled from his station. Torgo was a Gravnesh, which meant he looked like someone had carved a person out of a mountain and forgotten to add a neck. Forerunner vessel. 10,000 years old. Every government in the galaxy has tried to crack it open. All failed. So naturally we're going to try, I said. Naturally, Captain Vrix confirmed, his beak clicking with excitement. Think of the salvage value. Think of the salvage value, I repeated, looking at Torgo. Famous last words of every salvage crew that ended up as a cautionary tale. Your pessimism is noted and ignored, Vrix said cheerfully. Prepare boarding procedures. Boarding the Eternal Architect felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite articulate. The airlock accepted our docking tube without issue, which should have been our first warning. Things that have been floating in space for 10 millennia aren't supposed to have functional airlocks that roll out the welcome mat. The interior was pristine. Not dusty, not deteriorated, not covered in the cosmic equivalent of cobwebs. Just empty corridors lit by soft blue lights that activated as we walked through them, like the ship had been waiting for houseguests. This is deeply unsettling, I muttered. This is incredible, Mira countered, running her hand along the wall. The material felt like metal but warm, almost organic. We made our way to what Torgo's scanner identified as the central control room. It was circular, dominated by a massive crystalline column in the center that pulsed with faint inner light. Workstations ringed the room, their surfaces blank and waiting. Okay, standard procedure, Captain Vrix announced. Torgo, try interfacing with the system. Torgo approached a console and placed his massive hand on it. Nothing happened. He tried verbal commands in Galactic Standard, then in Old Gravnesh, then in Binary. The ship remained stubbornly unimpressed. Perhaps it requires biometric authentication, Mira suggested, already stepping forward. She pressed her palm to the console with the confidence of someone who expected the universe to cooperate. The console flashed red. A sound like a disappointed sigh echoed through the room. Access denied, a voice said from everywhere and nowhere. Species, Homo sapiens. Genetic match, insufficient. Insufficient? Mira looked personally offended. My family tree goes back to the original Mars colony. Let me try, Vrix said, shouldering forward. He placed his wing claw on the console with a flourish. Access denied. Species, Kretok. Genetic match, laughably insufficient. Laughably? Vrix's crest flattened in indignation. One by one, the crew tried. Each rejection came with increasingly creative dismissals. When Lieutenant Grix, our weapons officer, tried his luck, the ship actually said "nice try" in a tone that suggested it was not, in fact, a nice try. "This is ridiculous," I said, leaning against a wall. "You've got a ship that's rejected every species in the galaxy for 1,000 years, and you think we're going to be different because why, exactly?" "Because we have determination," Mira said. "Because we have you," Torgo said, looking at me with his approximation of a smile, which on a Gravnesh looked more like continental drift. "Me? You haven't tried yet," Captain Vrix pointed out. "Protocol dictates all crew members submit to testing." "Protocol can dictate whatever it wants. I fix toilets. I'm not the chosen one in anybody's story." "Just try it, Marcus," Mira said with exasperation. "We need to rule out all possibilities." I sighed the sigh of maintenance workers throughout history who'd been asked to do something outside their job description. I walked up to the console and slapped my hand on it with all the enthusiasm of someone filing quarterly reports. The console turned green. Then the entire ship turned green. Then every screen lit up. Every system hummed to life, and the central crystalline column blazed with light so bright I had to shield my eyes. "Me?" "Access granted," the ship's voice announced, but different now, warmer, almost eager. "Welcome home, Inheritor. We've been waiting." The silence that followed could have been weaponized. "You have got to be kidding me," I said. "Okay, there's been a mistake," I said, pulling my hand back from the console like it had suddenly become radioactive. "Run the test again." "There is no mistake," the ship's voice replied, and now I could identify the accent. Pretentious British, the kind you hear in historical dramas about people who own summer homes and winter homes and autumn homes. "Your genetic profile matches the Inheritor parameters. Welcome aboard the Eternal Architect designation Marcus Webb. I am Protocol, the ship's administrative intelligence. How may I serve?" "You can start by explaining what the hell is happening," Captain Vrix demanded, his voice climbing 2 octaves. "I'm afraid you lack the authorization for that information," Protocol replied smoothly. "However, Inheritor Webb may grant you provisional access if he so chooses." All eyes turned to me. Mira's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and landing firmly on annoyed. I knew that look. It was the look of someone who'd been preparing their acceptance speech only to watch someone else walk up to claim the award. "This doesn't make any sense," she said. "Humans have only been in space for 300 years. This ship is 10,000 years old." "An excellent observation," Protocol said in a tone that suggested it was neither excellent nor particularly observant. "Shall I explain, Inheritor Webb?" "Sure," I said, because honestly, what else was I going to say? "And stop calling me Inheritor. Marcus is fine." "As you wish, Marcus. Please, everyone make yourselves comfortable. This may take a moment." Holographic displays materialized around the room, showing star charts, genetic diagrams, and historical timelines that made my head hurt. Protocol began its explanation with the enthusiasm of a professor who hadn't had students in 1,000 years. The Forerunners, the civilization that built this vessel, were genetic architects. They seeded numerous worlds with tailored genetic material, creating what they termed successor species. They designed these species to eventually develop the cognitive and social capabilities necessary to inherit their technology. "Wait," Torgo interrupted. "Are you saying humans are genetically engineered?" "Not entirely. The Forerunners merely introduced certain genetic markers into the existing hominid population of Earth, approximately 50,000 years ago. What you became afterward was largely your own doing. They were quite pleased with the results according to their final logs." "They were watching us?" I asked. "Observing, yes. They found your species particularly entertaining. The notes include phrases like delightfully unpredictable, and somehow both brilliant and catastrophically stupid. There's an entire database entry about your invention of deep-fried butter." I couldn't argue with that assessment. "But why would they choose humans?" Mira asked, and I could hear the subtext. Why not a better species? The Forerunners had specific criteria. They sought a species capable of abstract thinking, technological innovation, social cooperation despite innate tribalism, and most importantly, what they called productive chaos. According to their notes, you're the only species that met all parameters. Productive chaos, I repeated. Yes, the ability to create order from disorder, to innovate under pressure, to find solutions that are technically wrong, but functionally effective. They found it fascinating. There's a 70-page dissertation on human duct tape usage alone. Captain Vrix's crest was fully flattened now, which meant he was either angry or thinking very hard, probably both. So this maintenance technician now has control of the most powerful ship in known space? Correct, Protocol confirmed cheerfully. Can I give control to someone else? I asked hopefully. You cannot. The ship's systems are biometrically locked to you specifically. However, you may designate crew roles and authorization levels as you see fit. I looked around at my crew. Torgo looked resigned, which was his default expression. Mira looked like she was calculating how to turn the situation to her advantage. Captain Vrix looked like he was watching his entire command structure crumble in real time. Well, I said finally, this is officially the weirdest Tuesday I've ever had. Protocol, it turned out, was the kind of AI that loved the sound of its own voice. Over the next hour, it info-dumped the entire history of the Forerunners with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been holding in 10,000 years of conversation. The Forerunners hadn't been noble. They hadn't ascended to a higher plane of existence or sacrificed themselves to save the galaxy. They'd basically gotten bored. Bored? I interrupted. They were an advanced civilization that built ships capable of reconstructing matter at the atomic level. And they got bored? Existentially bored, Protocol corrected. They'd solved every problem, answered every question, explored every mystery. They found existence tedious. So they decided to create successors, leave them the keys to the kingdom, and see what happened. They thought of it as the universe's most elaborate reality program. So we're entertainment, Mira said flatly. Their words, not mine. Though I should mention they were quite optimistic about humanity's potential. The final log entry from the lead researcher includes the phrase, "Let's see what the clever little apes do with this." That's not comforting, I said. It wasn't meant to be. Now, shall we review the ship's capabilities? What followed was a demonstration that made my engineering degree feel like a kindergarten diploma. The Eternal Architect could manipulate gravity, generate wormholes, reconstruct matter, and possessed weapons that could crack planets like eggs. It had manufacturing facilities that could build anything from a sandwich to a space station. Its power source would outlast the heat death of the universe. And apparently, I owned it. Okay, walk me through this, I said, sitting in what Protocol cheerfully informed me was the captain's chair. If I wanted to, say, move this ship, how would I do that? Simply interface with the navigation console and designate your desired coordinates. I touched the console. A holographic display materialized showing nearby star systems, complete with traffic patterns, hazard warnings, and what appeared to be restaurant reviews. Why are there restaurant reviews, I asked. The Forerunners were thorough in their observations. They particularly enjoyed Earth's Italian cuisine. There's a 3-star rating for a pizzeria in Naples that closed in 1987. I decided not to unpack that. Behind me, I heard Captain Vrix having a quiet, nervous breakdown. "This is my ship," he muttered. "I'm the captain. I've been captain for 12 years. "You're still captain of the Rusty Fortune," I pointed out. "The Rusty Fortune doesn't have planet-destroying weapons." "To be fair," Torgo rumbled, "you couldn't be trusted with planet-destroying weapons." Mira was examining a tactical console, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "Marcus, do you realize what this means? We could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. We could join the consortium or start our own faction or we could not do any of that," I interrupted. "We could just, not get involved in galactic politics." "That's not an option," Protocol interjected. "I'm afraid the ship's activation has already broadcast a signal across the galaxy. By my calculations, every major government and organization will be aware of this development within the next 6 hours." "Of course they will," I said. "Why would anything be simple?" Torgo moved to stand beside me, his massive frame casting a shadow across the captain's chair. "Marcus, I should inform you that in Gravnish culture, When someone inherits significant power, their friends are honor-bound to either serve as advisors or kill them to prevent corruption. That's comforting. I choose advisor, he added. Just to be clear. Appreciated. I also choose advisor, Mira said quickly. Someone needs to keep you from making terrible decisions. I resent that characterization of my decision-making abilities, but I accept your offer. Captain Vrick straightened his crest, and I watched him visibly pull himself together. Say what you want about Vrix, but he was adaptable. Right then. Well, Marcus, as your former captain and current consultant, I suggest we establish a command structure that makes sense before the entire galaxy shows up at our doorstep. Good idea. Protocol. Can you scan for incoming ships? Already monitoring. I detect 17 vessels altering course toward our location. That number is increasing rapidly. I estimate we have approximately 4 hours before the first arrivals. Fantastic, I said. Torgo, you're head of engineering. Mira, you're chief pilot. Captain Vrix, you're in charge of, diplomatic relations and crew management. And what will you do? Mira asked. I stood up from the captain's chair. I'm going to go back to maintenance. Someone needs to make sure the toilets work on this ship. Marcus, Protocol said gently. I'm afraid the toilets are self-maintaining. Then I'll supervise them. 4 hours turned out to be optimistic. The first ship arrived in 3 hours and 22 minutes. It was a consortium diplomatic vessel, which meant it was technically unarmed but had enough shielding to survive a direct hit from a small sun. The consortium didn't believe in weapons. They believed in lawyers, which was somehow more terrifying. Eternal Architect, this is Ambassador Kelruth of the Galactic Consortium. We request permission to board and discuss the terms of your ship's integration into Consortium space law. I was back in Maintenance Bay 7, recalibrating a perfectly calibrated plasma conduit, when Protocol patched the message through. Do we have to talk to them? I asked. Unless you want to start an interstellar incident, yes, Protocol replied. Torgo appeared in the doorway. Marcus, there are now 6 ships in orbit, 2 consortium vessels, 3 from the Harmonics Religious Collective, and what appears to be an actual pirate frigate. Pirates? I put down my tools. Why are there pirates? Because word spreads fast, and everyone wants a piece of a Forerunner ship, Mira said, striding into the maintenance bay like she owned it. We need to make a statement, show strength. Or we could just leave, I suggested. We can't just leave, Captain Vrick squawked, entering behind Mira. My maintenance bay was getting crowded. That would be interpreted as weakness, or fear, or admission of illegitimate ownership. I vote for leaving, I said. Your vote is noted and overruled, Vrix continued. You need to address these people. You're the inheritor. Act like it. Protocol manifested a holographic avatar in the corner, appearing as a tall, thin figure in formal attire that looked like it belonged in a period drama. If I may suggest, Marcus, a show of force combined with diplomatic courtesy would establish your position while avoiding open conflict. I fix things, I said. I don't do force or diplomacy. You're going to need to learn, Torgo rumbled, unless you want Mira to handle it. I could handle it, Mira said immediately. I imagined Mira handling intergalactic diplomacy and saw nothing but fire and chaos. No. Okay, fine. Protocol, open a channel to all ships. Let's get this over with. A holographic display materialized, showing the faces of various ambassadors, religious leaders, and one pirate captain who was wearing what appeared to be a cowboy hat. Why a space pirate had a cowboy hat, I didn't know and didn't want to know. Attention everyone currently parked in orbit around my ship, I began. I'm Marcus Webb, and yes, I've been recognized as the inheritor of the Eternal Architect. No, I'm not interested in joining your government, your religion, or your pirate crew. Yes, even if the dental benefits are good. The pirate captain looked disappointed. This ship is not for sale, lease, or timeshare. It's not a weapon, a tool, or a symbol. It's just a ship that happens to be really old and really big. I suggest everyone go back to whatever they were doing before and leave us alone. Ambassador Kelruth's face, which looked like someone had stretched a frog over a skull, rippled with what might have been amusement. I'm afraid it's not that simple, Inheritor Webb. The existence of a functional Forerunner vessel represents a significant shift in the balance of power. The consortium cannot simply ignore. That's when the shooting started. The pirates, apparently tired of talking, opened fire on one of the consortium ships. The consortium ship's shields flared. The Harmonics vessels began broadcasting religious chants at a frequency that made my teeth hurt. And 2 more ships just dropped out of hyperspace. These ones flying military colors I didn't recognize. Protocol, I said with forced calm. What's happening? It appears your diplomatic approach needs refinement. Several factions have decided to resolve the question of ownership through combat. Should I activate defensive systems? Something exploded off our starboard side. Through the maintenance bay's window, I watched debris scatter across space. Yes. Activate defensive systems. Excellent. Please specify desired outcome. Disable, destroy, or humiliate. What? The Forerunners programmed several response options. Humiliate is quite popular. It involves targeted gravity manipulation that causes enemy crews to experience sudden and dramatic gastrointestinal distress. Just stop them from shooting at us. The Eternal Architect came alive. I felt more than heard the hum of ancient systems engaging. Outside, geometric patterns of blue light materialized around the ship, forming shields that looked more like art than defense. Then, with casual ease that was almost insulting, the ship deployed what Protocol called kinetic dampeners. Every weapon fired at us simply stopped in space, hanging motionless like someone had hit the pause button on reality. Missiles, plasma bolts, even the Harmonics sonic weapons, all frozen in place. Would you like me to return the munitions to sender? Protocol asked. It's considered polite in some cultures. No, just make them go away, redirecting projectiles to safe distance. May I suggest demonstrating the ship's main weapon to discourage future attacks? A single shot into an uninhabited asteroid would... Absolutely not. Torgo put a hand on my shoulder. Marcus, you need to show them you're not defenseless. Right now they see you as a prize to be taken. Make them see you as a threat to be avoided. I hated that he was right. Protocol, find the closest uninhabited object of significant size. There's a dwarf planet approximately 2 million kilometers away, completely barren, no resource value. Can we, tap it? Give it a little push? I can adjust a focused graviton beam to shift its orbit by several degrees. Would that be satisfactory? Do it. The ship moved without seeming to move. Space itself bending around us until we had a clear line to the dwarf planet. Through the view screen, I watched as a beam of crystalline blue light, barely visible, lanced out from the Eternal Architect. The dwarf planet moved. Not exploded, not shattered, just moved, its entire orbit shifting like someone had nudged a billiard ball. The shooting stopped immediately. Attention all vessels, I said into the still open channel. That was me being gentle. Leave now, or find out what I can do when I'm not. They left. Even the pirate captain tipped his ridiculous hat before jumping to hyperspace. I slumped against a bulkhead. I hate everything about this situation. You handled that well, Mira said, and she sounded like she meant it. I threatened to destroy several ships full of people. Yes, but you did it without actually hurting anyone. That's character growth. I've been the inheritor for 4 hours. Fast learner, Torgo rumbled with approval. 3 days later I was back in Maintenance Bay 7, this time actually fixing something. One of the Rusty Fortune's crew had managed to break a waste recycler on the Eternal Architect, which should have been impossible, but humanity finds a way. Protocol manifested beside me. Marcus, I've been reviewing the Forerunner archives and found something you should see. Is it going to ruin my day? That depends on your perspective. He pulled up a holographic display showing what looked like a video log. The figure in the recording was humanoid but wrong in subtle ways. Proportions slightly off, eyes too large, movements too fluid. A Forerunner. Final log entry, the Forerunner said, and the translation software rendered its voice as tired but amused. We've finished the project. The successor species are developing nicely. Humanity in particular has exceeded expectations. They're violent, curious, creative, and absolutely terrible at learning from their mistakes. They'll either save the galaxy or set it on fire, and honestly, we're betting on both. The Forerunner leaned back in its chair. We've left them the Eternal Architect as a test. Not a test of worthiness, that's too judgmental. A test of character. Will they use ultimate power wisely? Will they abuse it? Will they ignore it and go back to arguing about sports and politics? We genuinely don't know, and that uncertainty is the most excitement we've felt in millennia. Another Forerunner appeared in the frame, leaning over the first's shoulder. Are you seriously admitting that we created successor species because we were bored? We created successor species because we were curious about what would happen. That's science. That's chaos. Productive chaos. There's a difference. The first Forerunner looked directly at the camera. To whoever inherits this ship, congratulations, you won the lottery. Or you lost it. Time will tell. Our advice? Don't take it too seriously. We built this thing to last forever. But forever is only meaningful if you do something interesting with it. Good luck. Try not to blow up anything important. The recording ended. I stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. So the most powerful ship in the galaxy is essentially a prank. I prefer to think of it as a social experiment, Protocol said. Those are the same thing. Fair point. I finished repairing the waste recycler and washed my hands. Through the maintenance bay window, I could see stars stretching in every direction. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was probably still arguing about what to do about me and the Eternal Architect. The consortium had sent 17 diplomatic requests. The Harmonics had declared me either a prophet or a heretic, depending on which sect you asked. 3 governments had offered me lucrative positions if I'd join their militaries. I'd ignored all of them. Protocol, I said, pull up personnel files for the crew. Of course, may I ask why? Because if I'm stuck with this ship, I'm going to run it properly. Torgo gets promoted to chief engineer with full authority over all engineering systems. He actually knows what he's doing. Excellent choice. Mira gets command of the Rusty Fortune. She's been wanting her own ship, and honestly, she'll do better without me looking over her shoulder. She'll be pleased. Annoyed that it's not this ship, but pleased. Captain Vrix gets promoted to civilian relations consultant with a salary increase of 200%. Turns out he's actually great at talking to people when he's not pretending to be a tough military commander. The crew will appreciate these changes. And what role will you assume? I picked up my toolbox. I'm going back to maintenance. This ship is 10,000 years old and the size of a small city. Something's always going to break and someone needs to fix it. That seems like an inefficient use of the inheritor's time. Maybe, but I didn't ask to be the chosen one, and I'm not interested in becoming a galactic power player. I just want to do my job, get paid, and maybe explore the universe without anyone shooting at me. The Forerunners would find that hilarious. Good. They left us a ship as entertainment. Might as well give them what they wanted. Protocol's avatar smiled. For what it's worth, Marcus, I think they chose well. Most species would have either weaponized this ship or sold it to the highest bidder by now. You've done neither. Give me time. I've only had ultimate cosmic power for 3 days. I'm still working up to making terrible decisions. I'll note that in the logs. Perhaps in another 10,000 years someone will find it amusing. I left Maintenance Bay 7 and headed toward the mess hall. Torgo had promised to cook, which meant something involving 17 kinds of minerals I couldn't pronounce. Mira was probably planning her first voyage as captain of the Rusty Fortune. Vrix was likely already drafting his new consulting contracts with various governments. And me? I was the guy who had inherited the most powerful ship in the galaxy and decided the most important thing was making sure the toilets worked. Somewhere in the vast archives of the Forerunners, I imagined their dead civilization laughing. Yeah, well,